you're meant to worship the sun. They will take over nightclubs, bars, brothels, hotels, casinos, pornography, and much worse, and rather than live to insulate themselves from the vice promoted by this world, they will intensify it and learn to wield it as a great weapon. The modern zoo wants you to be a weak and isolated individual. How shameful to drag out life like a dog and die overseen by strangers in a hospital who hate you, rather than to die in the prime of your youth for the sake of your friend and to leave behind a beautiful corpse. The only right government is military government, and every other form is both hypocritical and destructive of true freedom. All real thoughts come only when you walk outside, standing up, in fresh air. I knew this long before I was made aware of it through Nietzsche, who says you should distrust any thoughts you've had indoors. Add to that, any thoughts that come into your head in the fetid miasma of most cities. Add to that, when the whole day you're harassed and needled by the viciousness of others, that comes from a vulgar desire for power displayed by secretaries, service workers. I have no doubt that the gods, if they exist, would look only like perfected and improved versions of beautiful physiques of young men, just like they showed themselves to the Greek oracles and dreams. They were the first to discover the true biological and physical form of the man, the correct form, the true proportions. Noble peoples do not endure slavery, they're either free or they die out. There is no adaptation to slavery for some types of life. Very young rams, very young stag even when fawn, well before horns appear, play fight with heads budding. What came first for this animal, the development of horns or the knowledge and will to fight in this manner? In phenomenon like this is kept the secret and truth about evolution and life. The equivalent of the meme in political action is the prank. You really can't underestimate the power of a good prank. The Greek state was conceived as a work of art by the citizens. Spiritually, your insides are all wet, and there's a huge hole through where monstrous powers are fucking your brain, letting loose all your life and power of focus. Many are domestic animals and happy that way. I speak instead to the men who feel stifled by this bug world. The bugman pretends to be motivated by compassion, but is instead motivated by a titanic hatred of the well turned out and beautiful. If a god showed himself today to you, in a dream, would you have the inner energy and power to honor him and do his bidding in the world? The greatest hate that allies have against the enemy is the fact that the enemy has sowed sexual chaos and has destroyed romance. Life has a thing inside it that reaches beyond itself. This is intergalactic worm, I can't say here, you must wait. But if you don't reach beyond yourself, you're dead. Most of mankind is the walking dead. If young leftist men will start lifting and worshipping beauty, they will be forced to leave the left. Animals walk around in a state of permanent religious intoxication. This is the natural condition of the mind and intellect, the moment-to-moment perception of man as well. I heard some computer fool say that religion is the older virtual reality experience to justify his scam industry. No, the denuded state of the spirit and intellect, where you walk around demystified and disenchanted, is the virtual reality condition, and a terrible condition at that. Among your instincts you will find the longing for strong friendships that the modern evil tries to snuff out. And they have good reason to try this, because every great thing in the past was done through strong friendships between two men, or brotherhoods of men, and this includes all great political things, all acts of political freedom and power. The modern zoo wants you instead to be a weak and isolated individual. Chimp in state of nature never jerks off, but in captivity he does. What does this mean? In state of nature he's too busy, to put plainly. He is concerned with mastering space. Solving problem of life in and under trees, mastering what tools he can, mastering social relations in the jockeying for power and status. Deprived of this drive to development and self-increase, he devolves to pointless masturbation, in captivity, where he senses he is in own space, and therefore the futility of all his efforts and all his actions. The onanism of modern society is connected with its supposed hypersexualization and its infertility. It's not really hypersexualization, but the devolution of the spirit to the lassitude of a diffuse and weak sexuality. Well, as rare as beautiful bodies are, the mind in the same condition is even more rare. Let us strive, in our decrepit, cancerous and fetid world, for what is concrete and what we can try to attain. Those who forget the body to pursue a perfect mind or perfect soul, have no idea where to even start. Only physical beauty is the foundation for a true higher culture of the mind and spirit as well. Only sun and steel will show you the path. The best desire one thing above all, ever-flowing eternal fame among mortals. But the many glut themselves like cattle. It's important never to be ambitious. Men of ambition are losers. Act and feel like a winner and good things, friends, and victory will come. Beauty is the very rare and precious preserve of tribes that have striven to promote child-making for something other than financial, social and political gain. No, the promotion of ugliness is nearly universal, and the love of beauty is so rare. Among the great civilizations, only the ancient Greeks, the French, the Japanese, and somewhat the Italians, are true lovers of beauty and refinement, and have based their existence exclusively on the promotion of beauty. At such moments of mood where you're both calm and at least feel free, every detail of life becomes interesting, all takes the character of images from a peaceful dream that present themselves in turn and don't move you one way or another, because you see through them. We love dogs because they express so honestly and without dissimulation what we also are and want. They and other pets calm us because promote a kind of carelessness normal to animal life, unencumbered by thoughts of the past or worries about the future, none of which actually exist. Women are, in their natural state, close to this condition as well, or closer on the whole, which is where they get much of their charm and power from. The modern education, that teaches women to be hyper-aware, anxious for the future, abstract neurotics, etc., actually takes away their power to a great degree, while tricking them into thinking they are being tough or sassy. But a hyper-conscious woman is made powerless and charmless. When I post my images of vitality in the clear sun of a long noon, they feel a weight lifted off them. Many feel as if they've escaped the gravity of this trash world and returned to a time when the natural beauty of man could be displayed, indicating this is a form of life free to develop its powers. Most of the media is similarly compromised, although the average schmuck journalist is probably deluded by the platitudes of free press and the humanitarian doxies that have been banged in their heads. Inside head they have central vacuole full of fluid, no brain. To be effective in this world you must be very acquainted with the underworld. To gain a true hold on the foundations of this trash world, a certain group among the right will have to descend in this inferno. I am firmly convinced that this is the key to overturning everything that is corrupt and the path to the great purgation. Thucydides says the men of the Bronze Age enjoyed piracy and saw nothing wrong with it, and this is true. And what is the pirate but the original form of the free man and of all ascending life? In lake of some reptiles, when they overpopulate it and there is a surplus of refuse, there is a trigger in nature. A monster is born to them. A lizard many times the size of a normal one is born, who deals out destruction and calls the lake. Money is no match for force of arms combined with charm. What the Greeks admired was a carelessness and freedom from constraint that would shock us, and that upsets especially the dour leftists and the conservative role player. A man of great charisma who can seduce the people with a wild spirit and break through the rule of the pervasive bureaucracy media complex may be our best hope for the immediate problem. Self-help is completely useless and not what this book is about. Rather, I would like most to go toward self-destruction. Any man who improves his body through sun and steel will drift away from the modern left, a program of decrepitude and resentful monstrosity. They know this and are afraid. In ancient Greek cities, only the citizens were allowed to lift weights and work in the gym, slaves were forbidden. The only ones who survived the modern education hole, not to speak of the regime of modern medication, are precisely those in the litter who are born docile. Those peoples who choose death rather than slavery or submission in a confrontation, that is a people of masters. When, late in adolescence or sometime in youth, a boy decides he is gay, that is but the final act of self-misunderstanding. The drama of his spirit is reinterpreted on sexual terms. It is the injustice, but above all the filth, the disgusting suffocation of city life, the vision of life degraded and under distress, that led Buddha to his escape. He said, "The home is a place of filth." Labor and commerce are the ways to subject you to mere life and its preservation. When the superior are corrupted to a life of work and finance, they slowly move for their own destruction in the long run. The masses are dazzled by the fridge, the phone. They live drugged by assurances that the wizards who produce these things are modest engineers who live by publicly verified procedures. Their comfort in the regularity of nature has taken divine fear and awe away from them. It's clear the Greeks admired the power and freedom of the barbarian far more than the civilized way of the slave and his false intelligence. Single-minded purity of purpose is true manliness. The danger of our time is not that it makes people bad, but that it makes everything small and afraid. Know that despite all force and treachery and contrivance, all public sanctions and honors, the people will not be fooled. They know the real man of power and can tell the difference from a deformed usurper. The destruction of the cities in fire that the greatest warriors of antiquity took upon themselves was a form of divine warfare. And it was only possible because such men knew also how to listen to the voice of the gods and allowed themselves to be entirely possessed by a divine madness. This is, you know, why all tyrants and totalitarians are suspicious of strong friendships between men. Most of all this is feared by the middle-aged lesbos and defectives that are used as guards by our prison states. Please remember that these small people like Bill Gates, Zuckerface, and Bezos are entirely dependent men. They can't really do with their wealth what you think they can. For example, they could never just kill a man and take his wife, but even the ruler of the smallest African country has this power, this true wealth. When your happiness and wealth depends on the force of arms of another, you're not really your own man. Nor can you enjoy the greatest delights in life. I understand the desires of those on the right who long for the great parts of the past, but understand this, any such attempt in the modern world, I mean to promote the small village, the rustic life, the modest life, will lead not to the re-establishment of the glories of past ages, but to the freezing of modern corruption, to its stabilization and permanence. You will get small communities run by the genocracy to suppress true manhood and youth, but this time with the benefit of whatever modern technology is already around. They will do so in the name of traditional virtue. They will be Christian, maybe, but their Christianity will be a cover for Marxism in one way or another. It doesn't matter what ideology or religion or ideals you give them, they will still behave the way they're born to. This is always the case in much so-called primitive life under the thumb of the empowered old matriarchs and the conceptual dildos they use to clobber the heads of young men. Matriarchy and anonymity are the principles of these piles of biomass. Never call them hives. The hive is noble. The hive can be a work of beauty and order, but the city in its original form, is humanity reduced to a steaming rat pile. In the Orient, this has always referred to a steaming pile of humanity, with crowded fetid eateries, close-packed throngs wading through shit and the filth of animals, rabbit and hen kept in cages, abused orphans, endless drone of yelling humangs, hawking wares and spitting phlegm on street. This intuition of own space comes on one very early. With eyes open, it's like an evil spirit inhabits everything. Feminism is the revolt of women against the outrage of democracy. They have been in a revolt against the inability of the bugmen to command authority or respect. The left realizes they look weak and lame because they are. They know they have nothing to offer youth but submission and lectures. They know they're unsexy and staid. Already technology had been reduced to the development of dick pic apps for adolescents. Science has long ago ceased and been castrated. Will it be born again? You don't see yourself as you really are, but maybe some nightmare can show it to you. AI is the golem of those who hate life. It is their true messiah and their vengeance. We want to think they're a lot more interesting than they are. It's easier to think we're ruled by demons than by defectives who would normally be running a smoked fish stand or running vodka parlors outside Minsk. When city is destroyed, its gods are destroyed. You must remember that each city had its tutelary gods and spirits for protection. This is because human nature is feeble and easily led astray, and only when driven by this kind of monstrous and single-minded obsession for the heights of power can it find the motivation to overcome the lying, dirty ape in us. In fact, the great totalitarian states you know about weren't that different from our own, or the liberal democracies. We live in the same kind of state, only that it is more prosperous, and the viciousness of the power is indirect and hidden. A healthy animal not under distress, not maimed, not trapped by man, seeks first when young. Space. The small, orderly city of the North Italians, the German and Swiss cities Machiavelli praises for how well run they are. This is entirely alien to the Orient, and indeed to all other civilized societies that we know of. I see no reason why, if there should be epidemics of all kinds of diseases, the same can't also be true for what we call mental disease. No great discovery has ever been made by the power of reason. It's possible much of known history is falsified. Nietzsche among many others hinted at this. I don't think we can ever know who these individuals are, but I suspect they walk among us like average men. It is the very character of domestic life to present the world as an enclosed own space, and, although mankind adapts itself on the whole to this condition, both biologically and culturally, yet there remains a glimmer of the opposite tendency inside even the lowliest. He can't help but experience this new state of things in late civilizations, except with dread, the dread suspicion. an uncanny suspicion that the world is artificial. He begins to sense that this hothouse he lives in is the malevolent creation of a demiurge that likes to observe our sufferings, that he and his minions feed on them. In the remote future, should the evil of human innovation continue unchecked, we really will live in the world the Gnostics feared, and that spark of vital life and energy that is the gift of nature to all youthful peoples born from its womb, that spark will remain entrapped in matter, wrongly configured matter entirely foreign to its inborn desires and workings, but fashioned instead for the benefit of something else. Social justice. But why only social? Why set your sights so low? You mean just the opinions of the many? Who cares? Here is my vision of the true justice, the justice of nature. The zoos opened, predators unleashed by the dozens, hundreds, 4,000 hungry wolves rampaging on streets of these hive cities, elephants and bison stampeding, the buildings smashed to pieces, the cries of the human bug shearing through the streets as the Lord of Beasts returns. This is just what AI is. It is a fantasy of power, of the conspiracy of biological interests that unites the nerds, the intellect of reason, the party that believes in empty words, the middling, and the Jews of the human spirit into hoping for their golem. Work was never pleasure for me, nor homekeeping thrift, which feeds good children. But to me oared ships were pleasure, and war, and well-glinted spears and arrow. Modern democracy is totalitarian and vicious, and tries to subject the best to the rule of the heaps of biological refuse, and most especially to the rule of those who can stir them up. In fact, it's America and the Western world that is run by spooks and intel agencies. They've placed their assets and compromised patsies in the corporate world, no less than in other government agencies and among elected politicians. Many, like Obama for example, are entirely creations of this or that faction inside the security system. These in turn are allied to oligarchies and often to foreign interests and powers, so that it's hard to think many Western nations have anything but a parody of freedom and national sovereignty. It's impossible for the erased males to command any respect from the people, and still less from their women. Feminism then is the revolt of women against the outrage of democracy. They have been in a revolt against the inability of the bugmen to command authority or respect. And you must understand that there is no bottom to this freedom or revolution. There won't be any opportunity to say I told you so. They will never learn a lesson from their foolishness. And there isn't the insecurity you have put them in. The calamity that will surely follow from going down this path will not be a teachable moment to anyone. There isn't the beta, but you're wrong to think it was ever any different. No, great civilizations and cultures were never founded nor kept alive by betas. Who was there in the first place to give rights, and of what use is a right if it's not also a privilege? But it often happens that the men of power become decadent and let the state drift into the hands of those who can't rule, and who start to resent them for this abdication. Women become also very aggressive, once real and relaxed manhood atrophies. If you imagine that women in the Muslim world, for example, are sweet and feminine. They are hungry viragos of iron will. Science rightly understood helps us understand the types, the species, the true cleavages of nature. Science is not in and of itself the cause of our problems, of your alienation, nor does it have any content beyond who uses it and for what. I foresee a time, not too far in the future, when the Leviathan will not be able to hold itself together. I'm afraid that, in the end, the examples of ancient men of strong hand, ancient men of power, will be very discouraging to many of you. Because you can't easily replicate their achievements and power in our time. Also, while you may not be able to emulate them in every way, because the age we live in is one of total repression, you can still take some inspiration from their examples, and try to live the same in some way, try to live according to a Bronze Age mindset. There are women who were great scientists, but like women who were great chess players or poets, they are probably spiritual lesbians. In most Greek cities there were the aristocratic clubs and fraternities, which were always places of great plans, great ideas and spiritual ferment. Where is your bulwark today against Babylon, when all this has been made illegal for you? Reproduction is side effect of animal desire for discharge of strength after mastery over space is achieved. I was roused from my slumber by my frog friends, and I declare to you, with great boldness, that I am here to save you from a great ugliness. A defeated male that is turned into a peon and a neutered beast for women and hidden masters is a terrible thing to see. Western civilization, the European city, is unusual because it is the attempt to preserve free and barbaric life within the confines of the city. Throughout history we've almost always been outnumbered, and it hasn't been a problem. It's not clear that writing is a great advance for much of history. Its value is questionable. Only quite late some productions of genius arise that redeem the skill of writing. Anyone born with a will to conquest and expansion of boundaries will feel thwarted now, will awaken at a young age to find themselves in a world pervaded by their spirit and break them. How one responds to this, that is different.